Welcome to another live episode of Marketplace Masters, brought to you by Merchant Spring, the leading marketplace analytics platform for Amazon agencies and Amazon vendors. Marketplace Masters is all about going deeper into the challenges that brands and agencies face to lift performance via practical actions and insights. I'm your host, Paul Sonneveld, and today we are exploring how traditional grocery and CPG brands can build a successful sales channel on the Amazon vendor platform. To help us do this, I have invited Clint George to join us and share his expertise. Let me introduce him. Clint is the founder and owner of Brand Focus Digital. He works tirelessly to help manufacturers sell their products easier and more efficiently on Amazon and other online retailers in North America and across the globe. Based in the Seattle area with prior Amazon employees as team members, Brand Focus Digital works with brands across a variety of categories, including food products, pet-related merchandise, health and beauty, and outdoor gear. Thank you for being on the show today, Clint.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited about this topic. I've spent many years in grocery retail and health and beauty myself, so these are topics that are very dear to my heart, and I'll try and make a promise to our viewers and listeners today that we will try and keep it within 30 minutes, although certainly just, we'll try. It's not a commitment because I think there's a lot to discuss. So let's get started. The first thing I want to ask you, Clint, is, when you talk to a CPG brand that is exploring the Amazon vendor platform, what are some of the things you tell them up front?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Great question. There's a lot of varieties depending on the vendor's situation, but some of the things I tell them up front are, selling on Amazon is a lot more complicated than most people think. There's that misnomer that you can just contact somebody at Amazon just like you can with a brick and mortar buyer. That's not the case. It's set up to be self-service. There's a lot involved that you need to know and a lot of time commitment. The second thing I talk to them about is setting their items up correctly. The first time is very crucial. So making mistakes, that can be very hard, very difficult to fix. So for example, if you mistype a brand name by one letter on one item and then it's different on another item, it's very difficult to fix those later on. Third thing I talked about is managing their brand. Even if they're choosing not to actively sell on Amazon, or if they have a third-party network selling, they should establish a brand registry account and really with their trademark of that particular brand and really own that on Amazon so they can control content. That should be the very least they should do. And then the last thing is I talked to them about utilizing Amazon to help fulfilling orders like from other websites, such as their own website, their D2C site, eBay, or other platforms. This is something that's very easily done, but through apps and other APIs that they can attach to Seller Central. It's something that we talk about definitely with them.
So onto that topic of distribution, many grocery brands obviously very familiar with supplying to bricks and mortars, and been doing that for probably decades. What are some of the differences, similarities between distributing your product via Amazon versus traditional bricks and mortar channels?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we get into a lot of the details with each vendor, and again, everyone is different. But I talked to them about what's called right sizing their pack sizes. So an example of that would be, let's say you're a soup company with canned soup or canned products, and you're shipping 24 count cases to brick and mortar stores. You don't really want to set that up on Amazon to sell 24 count case product on Amazon. It's really not going to be the right consumption size for the consumer. It's not going to be the right price points. So you really want to set this up for the online channel and think of it differently as it's the online channel and not just for Amazon. It could be for your own D2C site. It could be for many other platforms that you choose to sell on online.
And is this something that you work with on? How do you approach that question? With clients, how do you work through? What is that right format for the Amazon vendor platform?
Yeah, I mean, you want to ask those questions up front. So part of when I'm talking to a vendor is looking at their products ahead of time, doing a little bit of research. I'm also talking to them about their preconceived notions or their thoughts about Amazon. A lot of vendors will go into it thinking that if I just list my products, I'll sell $1 million in Amazon in 3 months, and that's really not the case. You've got to look at Amazon differently than brick and mortar in terms of it can be used as a marketing platform, to make sure you get your content out there, you get it correctly. One of the things that I see and from my past brick and mortar experiences, that consumers, on Amazon tend to use, they spend 25 seconds on Amazon on a page versus in the past with my brick and mortar experience, it was about 9 seconds in front of the shelf. And those figures might, change over the years and over different platforms. But you have to think of, consumers are using their mobile devices now while they're shopping in a brick and mortar store to look at pricing. They're also comparing pricing. They're comparing content. So think of Amazon as a content builder. If they're looking at your product in front of the shelf and they want to buy it right there, you've got that opportunity now for them to look at their mobile device and see that product and look at the differentiating factors. So that's a great way to kind of view Amazon and think of it as, hey, this is a long-term venture. I'm not just throwing my items up there poorly listed and hoping they sell. I need to go into it with, a mindset of this is a platform, marketing, content, and really get the right content up there.
Yeah. And when it comes to a department store or a grocery store, as a CPG brand, you are typically the only supplier of that product into that store. On Amazon, you could well have other parties selling your own product, or your own distributors doing that. How should grocery brands think about that, and other ways to manage that?
Yeah, and that's another, I think, a misconception where brands will say, "Hey, I go into this, selling my product, and I'm automatically going to be the choice on our Amazon's choice. I'm going to win the buy box." Those are things that I talk to them up front about controlling their distribution network. So if they sell to, taking North America and specifically the United States into consideration, if they sell to a distributor like KeHE or UNFI, those particular distributors have programs to sell to their own third parties who then sell on Amazon. So if you're selling to those distributors, you better be able to control that distribution network somewhat by controlling how many your amount of MCBs that you give out, like on a percentage basis. If you're too deep on your discounts, those third parties are going to then purchase the product at a deeper discount, and they're going to be able to compete with you on Amazon. Amazon is a free market platform, so third parties are allowed to sell. A misconception is that you can use just brand registry and eliminate all these third parties, and that's just not the case. That's not Amazon's intention. That's not really the way to use a brand registry. So I talk to them about controlling their distribution and really just knowing what the potential issues could be, so that we get ahead of that before we even launch.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, we had a podcast around hybrid vendors, doing a little bit of 1P and 3P, and certainly common in a number of categories. In the grocery and the CPG space, do you see much of that? Or is it predominantly a 1P or a vendor only type arrangement? What does it look like?
Yeah, no, I definitely. There's a lot of hybrid situations going on, and that's something we manage, constantly with different vendors. Vendor itself within grocery is something that is not given out very often now in the current situation. You would have to have a brand that is not currently set up on Amazon, where a vendor manager or somebody at Amazon would have to reach out to you to give you an invite. That particular situation can happen, such as Amazon Fresh. You would need an invite to Vendor Central to be able to sell on Amazon Fresh. But for shelf-stable products on Amazon.com, for example, the way to go now is, if you're brand new, you would set up a seller account and do either FBA or FBM situation. But in terms of a hybrid, if you've got an existing Vendor Central account, it's not uncommon for vendors to sell both ways in a hybrid situation. And we deal with that pretty much day in and day out in our business.
Just on that question of receiving that invite from Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of listeners would love to get some secret sauce around that, right? So, it's an invite thing. So it's, how do I get Amazon to invite me? Are there any things, and I'm obviously not referring to black hat stuff, but things how do you get Amazon's attention? How do you get their interest? Are there things you can do to make the invite more likely?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is to sell as much product as you can, and build your business. So whether that's through Seller Central first and FBA, I've had those situations where a vendor starts out and they sell, they get their sales up very quickly, and they do get an asked situation by Amazon. But just participating in many different programs on Amazon to really get noticed, that's the best way. I mean, I don't have any secret sauce in terms of, I do have contacts at Amazon, but in terms of the vendor side, that's where I came from. And they've really shifted their gears in terms of having a lot of vendor managers, so to speak, that you can contact. They just don't have them readily available to where, oh, here's a list where I can just find on LinkedIn and go contact them. So that's a difficult thing. So the best thing I would say is to really just get your sales up in a quick manner, participate in different programs, and we can talk about some of those in later on in this podcast.
Thanks, Clint. Yeah, it sounds like make sure your product really appeals to consumers, that they're buying it, and then chances are Amazon will take notice.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I would say.
So let's move on. A lot of things we've talked about can be applied to most categories on the Amazon vendor platform, but grocery in particular does come with its own specific considerations. What are some of those, and how do you think about them? How do you manage them?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some unique aspects to grocery products. I mean, they can be shelf stable, they can be refrigerated, they can have what we would call a meltable status. So they can either be chocolate or certain candy products, like gummy bears and things that would melt above 70 degrees or even 100 degrees. They could be frozen as well. So those are some considerations of the actual product, the end use product. Then the other part of it is, how is it packaged? What's the primary package look like? Is it in glass? Is it in a canned product that can dent while shipping? So all these things that are somewhat unique to a food product that you have to consider. Well, how do I get this to the end use consumer in a way that I don't damage the product? It doesn't melt. There's all these considerations. Maybe it's glass. It shatters inside the package and creates a mess. All these things that are not really easy to figure out versus maybe a battery or an electronic product that is easier to package.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about shelf life. I know certainly this used to cause a lot of headaches for in my previous career, always working with suppliers, things going out of date, or we used to call it short code, trying to come up with actions to solve the issue or get them to pick up the stock. I mean, how does that work in terms of Amazon? What are some of the parameters around shelf life? And when shelf life becomes at risk, what are some of the actions that either Amazon or the vendor can take?
Yeah, I mean, with shelf life, the way I think about it is yes, there's going to be a shelf life on all the products really with food, whether it's frozen, meltable, or refrigerated. But in terms of mainly the shelf stable products, because we're thinking of products that would actually go into the Amazon warehouse and utilize their what's called their fulfilled by Amazon or FBA network, that qualifies the product for Prime. So ideally, if it's a shelf stable product, we would want to look at expiration dates. So the other things I talk about with vendors are Amazon's not really great at what's called FIFO, or first in, first out. They're not the best at following that method, which they should, but they're not. Products really need to arrive at Amazon's warehouses or their FCs with at least 105 days of expiration left. That used to be 90, but they've kind of pushed that up a little bit by 15 days to 105. What I talk about with vendors is if they're not more than 180 days, which is about 6 months roughly, we may want to consider not putting that product into an Amazon warehouse. And then, of course, if it's meltable, you have to consider, well, during the summer months in the United States, especially, and even in Canada, the temperatures can rise greatly. So depending on where that product sits, Amazon does not have really any refrigeration in their shelf stable warehouses. They don't climate control it super well. If it's, of course, if it's Amazon Fresh, they do have that, but in the shelf stable warehouses for Amazon.com and Amazon.ca, they do not climate control their warehouses. So you have to consider, hey, if I have a meltable product or a product that could get damaged after, say, 70 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, what's my consideration? And so then it shifts to, after expiration date, what do we do with primary package products that could be damaged? So I kind of alluded to that earlier. And how do we package those so they don't get damaged? Do we use what's called frustration-free packaging, or what's called SIAC, or that stands for ships in own containers? So those are some methods to package in a group or in a case or a sellable unit, that particular primary packaging that could get damaged. So those are some definite considerations. Another item that's grocery specific is, kind of, I alluded to it earlier, is right sizing the package or having a clear pricing and packaging strategy, really. So if you are talking shelf stable and utilizing FBA, your actual percentage of the fees will change if the product is under $15 retail or right at $15. So it goes, the fee that Amazon charges you goes from 15% down to 8% at $15 retail for grocery. So that's a huge jump down and a huge savings. So that really allows grocery vendors to say, hey, maybe I should set up a trial pack, really get the consumer into my brand and get them to try my brand, and then later on I can step them up to move them up to a larger dollar ring and maybe a larger bulk purchase later. So those are some considerations that we definitely want to have that are very grocery specific versus a lot of other categories.
One of the, obviously one of the things that makes grocery quite unique is the purchase frequency, right? And the fact that people tend to, some products, week in, week out, which sort of gets onto the topic of subscribe and save. Mm-hmm. How do you talk to your Amazon vendor clients about subscribe and save, and how to maximize, or should they maximize, that Amazon platform and initiative?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's something that has proven to grow sales on Amazon. When I worked at Amazon, we had lots of metrics that would show that consumers that were getting a subscribe and save item were more likely not to switch to another brand. They were also likely to get up to 4 shipments of that product, depending on the frequency, so they would stay in your brand franchise longer. So it's a very valuable customer. The dollar ring itself, the actual dollar ring of the market basket was quite a bit larger as well. So those are all great things. So we want to maximize subscribe and save to the fullest. The difference, though, if it's a 1P versus a 3P situation, and most vendors right now are either switching to that hybrid situation where they're going out of the hybrid situation, really switching to either a seller only of an FBA. It's not something that you can control right away. You can't automatically just click a button and say, I want all my items on subscribe and save. So Amazon's looking at a lot of factors. They're looking at how quickly do you keep your product in stock. Is it, does it run out of stock and you have gaps there? So the keys are to keep your product in stock, always have plenty of inventory, that kind of thing. Keep your price point at a great price point. Look at different options for consumers. Amazon will then automatically put those items over a period of time onto subscribe and save. There are a few programs such as Launchpad that you can get involved in that actually help speed that process up. But that program's only, there's certain restrictions there. You've got to, be a newer brand that's only been on Amazon for 4 years or less, and there's a few other restrictions. So that's not even a guarantee that you can get on that program. But definitely it's a valuable thing to have on your products.
Can I just clarify, Clint, when you were talking about that qualification process for Amazon to switch on, subscribe, and save on your products, does that relate to 3P or being an Amazon seller, or to 1P as well? Or, is that more of an automatic thing if you're in the 1P?
Yeah, definitely. That's good to clarify. 1P, it is pretty automatic as long as you've got a 1P situation. They typically will have you sign up for a co-op agreement that actually ties back to subscribe and save. But on the 3P situation, I was specifically talking about that, where it's not an automatic situation. And you do have to fund that, and you can agree to fund that at a 5 or 10% rate. The 1P situation is actually at a 15% rate. So there is some subtle differences there. And that's off of the retail, not off the costs. But those are some things that you do have to keep in mind. But on the 1P side, that's really limited now to vendors that are kind of grandfathered in there.
So would you say, we used to talk about this sort of, the funding element of those type of discounts. Does Amazon generally look for 100% funding of that discount that comes with subscribe and save from its retail partners, or is it a joint investment?
Yeah, Amazon is a lot about themselves. So you're going to be funding all of that discount yourself. So even if it's a 1P situation, that co-op agreement would basically have you fund all of that rate. Now it is geared only for those customers that opt into the program. So it's not on every product that you sell. It's only for those specifically that you sell under subscribe and save. Same goes for an FBA situation or Seller Central. You would choose to fund it either at that 5% or 10% rate, and then you are liable for all those cases that are sold under subscribe and save. So if the customer did not opt into subscribe and save, you're not charged that rate.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to take the conversation just up a level again and talk about best practices. You've been in this industry for a long time. You've worked with lots of Amazon vendors, both during your time at Amazon and obviously running your own agency in Seattle. If you look across everything you've worked with, and you're trying to pick out, brands and manufacturers who really do that well, what is it that characterizes them? What are some of those best practices that the good players in this game really put into practice?
Yeah, I think, there's several, and you have to think of this as they all really work together. You can't just pick and choose one of these things and only do one or two or three. You really, the brands that excel on Amazon and the ones that do sell really well out of the gate are doing all of these things. And that doesn't mean you have to do them all at once and right away and within 30 days, that kind of thing. But those brands that succeed are doing these items, all of them in conjunction, and they all work together. And so I'll start off with protecting your brand on Amazon. So you're going to need a trademark for your brand. Most companies have already got that kind of set up in the works, but you need a trademark or an application for a trademark to get set up on brand registry. And most of the times, setting up your brand, from scratch on Amazon, it pretty much requires that to really even get your product set up. So you also need to solidify your logistics network. So that doesn't mean just figuring out the right size of your product, your selling unit. It also means, who's going to ship the product either in bulk to FBA, or if my product is refrigerated, do I have a great warehouse network that can ship directly to the consumer? So you need to get those two things solidified. Then you need to have a strong team to build your listings. You need, robust content, great images, max your images out to between 7 and 9 per product. You want to set up enhanced or what's called A+ content on each product. Again, that doesn't have to be done in the first 20 or 30 days, but you want to get that set up to where you're doing it. Next, you want to utilize all the Amazon programs that you can possibly use to market. So we talked about a few of them, which is Subscribe and Save, and that's mainly on consumable items. Advertising, using Amazon's pay-per-click advertising model. You want to have promotions. I would call them timely promotions. So not every month, not necessarily every quarter, but Prime Month is coming up in July. You'd want to have probably a promotion there, maybe quarter Q4, depending on your products. You also want to take advantage of Amazon's business discounts. So that's kind of an up and coming thing that Amazon's focused on, setting up end use consumers with business accounts. And they have to have, in North America, it's called an EIN number, a tax ID number. In other countries, it's a VAT number. They'd have to have that to be able to set up as a business-only account, and they would be able to see certain discounts that you only offer to businesses. Next, you want to build a brand store to gate your products. And this will allow you to also use that link for that brand store in social media posts. So that you would want to maximize all social media possible. So if you're posting on social media, you want to have a regular schedule of posting links back to Amazon saying, hey, come find my products on Amazon, or setting up a social media discount or any discounts for promotions you're running.
And sorry, Clint, just to interrupt. When you say gate your products with the use of a brand store, really are you just talking about the fact that the brand store is one of the few areas left on Amazon where your competitors will not be able to advertise directly, sort of head to head with your products? It's sort of your own space.
Yeah, and it's basically a dedicated link of your products. It's typically has a nice little banner at the top, highlighting your brand. A lot of times we utilize this in what are called sponsored brand advertising. That shows up the top of a page, and it is paid, but only if a customer clicks on the ad do you get charged. So you want to utilize that because once a consumer goes into that link, it's only your products. So it's like you said, Paul, it gates the products away from competitors. It's almost like they're shopping within a tiny little store within Amazon, and that really protects your brand. It also shows all the other products that you have to offer in one spot. So it's a great way to kind of utilize that. It's really hard, obviously, to talk in terms of that on a podcast without showing it, but that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then there's a few last things I would say is utilize programs such as Amazon Live and Amazon Posts to enhance impressions on your products. We haven't really talked much about reviews, but if the products are new on Amazon, you'd want to add and maximize those reviews to as many as possible. You could use a program such as Vine to do that, and that's a Amazon sanctioned program. And then we talked a little bit about advertising, but you'd want to have an advertising strategy and a budget associated. What we talk about is what's called an always-on approach. Some manufacturers have in their minds that I could just advertise, 2 weeks out of every month. You'd really want to have the advertising turned on all the time. You don't want to just take a break or try to do those, but definitely you want to utilize that to max, and you want to do all of these things that I spoke about. You really can't pick and choose one or two of them, because the success will definitely depend on it.
Yeah. The reverse of that question is the common mistakes, right? And we're a little bit short on time, and I want to get to Prime Day as well. So
Right.
maybe let's just keep it to one or two examples. But certainly the Amazon vendor platform has seen lots of failures too. I've seen it myself here in Australia. Lots of disappointments, misalignment of expectations, and the like. What would you say? What are one or two really common reasons as to why the Amazon vendor platform may not live up to manufacturers' expectations?
Yeah, I mean the two that I would key on is vendors that don't have success. They list their products poorly. So that means they have 3 bullet points. They might have 3 images only, or 2 or 1, and their pages don't look very robust. They don't have enhanced content. Maybe they have 25 different flavor variations of a food product, and they try to cram them all on one page, and that's called a variation. That's great to do, but not to have 20 or more items on a page. And then in conjunction with that, they advertise poorly. They either don't have an advertising strategy, or they don't utilize software, and they just try to do it manually, and they do one advertising platform or position like sponsored products, and that's it, and they're losing their own brand name. So that's when I see lack of success. That's one of the biggest, most common things that I see. Brands think, oh, I can just throw my brand up there and it'll sell, and that's it.
Thank you. All right, I want to quickly squeeze in one last topic. We're well over the 30-minute mark, but
Sure.
really keen to get your view. And of course, I'm going to be asking about Prime Day. You mentioned July. I guess there's not much runway left in June, so it's going to be July. I really have 2 questions. One, what day is Prime Day going to be? I usually get not a very accurate answer here, and we know why. But I guess even more importantly, I'm always thinking about Prime Day in the context of 3Ps and Amazon sellers. What role? Maybe let's start off there. What role does Prime Day play for Amazon vendors? And if it does play a role, how to maximize the opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. To answer your first question, the quick answer is right now Amazon has not let anybody know what days the Prime Day is. On some of their webinars that they had in the past, they've mentioned that Prime Day is coming up in July. So they have narrowed it down to a month, but they have not announced the actual days. They typically will announce the days about roughly 10 days ahead. My guess is it's going to be sometime after July 5th, that time frame, but probably more likely the second week of July. It's usually been 2 days rather than 1. When it first started, it was 1 day, and then most recently, in the last couple of years, they've added 2 days to it. So what I talk to my vendors about is really changing their mindset. So this is not a negative thing. It's just thinking of Prime Day as not just the 2 days that are the deals, but think of it as a whole month. So look at Prime Day or Prime Month as an event. The traffic typically is increased about 25% during that time. So we ask our vendors, we talk to them about setting up ramping up their advertising bids about 2 weeks prior. And then also the week that the 2 Prime Days are ending up, ramping up your bids during that time. And then 2 weeks after we ramp them down, but we still have higher bids on keywords than we would the previous month. And then if you want to discount, think about the products that you want to discount. Other things to consider are making sure your inventory is ramped up well ahead of that month. So, we've been gearing up our vendors in June to make sure we have shipments included, and we're all geared up with the right inventory numbers.
Thank you. That's some really great tips. Sounds like Prime Day is not far away, and certainly an opportunity for Amazon vendors as well. Now we are out of time, so keen to wrap it up here. Clint, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate the expertise you've brought to the table, and you certainly helped us demystify, how to do grocery well in the context of Amazon vendor. So thank you for many of the practical tips along the way as well. Now, I know that you are offering a free 1-hour Amazon vendor consultation for those Amazon vendors that are listening to the podcast today. For those that are interested in exploring this offer, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that. My email is clint@brandfocusdigital, all one word, .com. So I don't know if you can put that in the comment section or not, but that would be the best way. And if you can, kind of allude to the free consultation, that will help me out, and then we can set something up and get on a video call and talk you through any of the issues you might have or any questions you might have.
I think, let me just check if is that the correct email address, Clint?
That is, yeah. No, I appreciate that.
All right. So email Clint if you are interested in a 1-hour free consultation to help you lift performance of your Amazon vendor account. All right. Thank you so much, Clint. It was great having you on the show.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to visit Merchant Spring for exclusive offers to listeners to this show. And with that, I thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you at our episode next week. Thank you very, very much.